Welcome back, everyone, to GGN. It's Friday, October 18th, 2013. My website is ggnonline.net. Skull of Homo erectus throws story of human evolution in disarray. Pretty interesting article. I've actually had a couple articles that have been backing up back from October 10th relating to basically cavemen and stuff. It says a haul of fossils found in Georgia, that's not the state of Georgia, suggests that half a dozen species of early human ancestors were actually all Homo erectus. So if they're right, it would trim the base of the human evolutionary tree and spell the end for the names such as Homo rudolfensis, whatever, gonsenjensis, ergaster, and habilis. They say that they're using 5 or 6 names for the same whatever species of human, but early human, but they could all be from one lineage. From October 10th, scientists traced 19 living relatives of Otzi the Iceman, whose 5,300-year-old body was found frozen in the Alps. I'm sure you guys probably heard of this, but the Austrian scientists tested the DNA of 3,700 male blood donors. They matched a genetic mutation to the mummy found back in 1991. The hole in his collarbone suggests that he was killed by an arrow. Then a brain scan concluded he died from a fall. They discovered he suffered brain damage, likely caused by a blow to the head. So they found dark spots in the back of the Iceman's mummy's cerebrum and concluded that he may have died from head injury. Suggested that falling after being hit by an arrow or while climbing may have caused this head injury. He was around 45 years old, 5'5", and was lactose intolerant. So he was frozen with all his possessions, including a bow, a quiver of arrows, and a copper axe, wearing warm clothing including a cloak made of woven glass, a coat and leggings made from goatskin, and a bearskin cap with a leather chin strap. Fossils' teeth shed light on human ancestors' diet from October 8th. The study of tooth wear in several hominids, the oldest known extinct human relatives, has unraveled their use of toothpicks in their diet. The Swiss researchers' study on several ancient jaws belonging to the hominids in Georgia led them to find diversity in the fossil's teeth. They lived about 1.77 million years ago and represented an early expansion of human ancestors outside Africa. They said they had human-like spines and lower limbs that would have been well suited for long-distance travel. So the study unveiled evidence of gum disease, such as swelling and infection caused by overuse of some tools like toothpicks. I say man's greatest invention may not have been the wheel or taming fire, but the twig toothbrush, because it gave us longer lives to invent and evolve. The scientists say cavemen used frayed and sharpened sticks on teeth. They kept their teeth healthier, allowing man to live longer than other animals. They say regular cleaning shown by marks of the wood made on teeth. The practice was first used by the Homo habilis between 1.9 and 1.6 million years ago. They were also used to ease pain caused by several oral diseases. And they're saying here that Neanderthals recycled. It says human ancestors collected broken tools to make new ones 300,000 years ago. They collected broken and discarded tools to reshape them. It's found in Spain, North Africa, Italy, and Israel. They said here it highlights recycling's role as a basic survival strategy. But of course, this article is supposed to be used to push eco-terrorism, basically, the green agenda. I think it was just something you picked up unconsciously and used to make something else that started about 500,000 years ago. It says most ancient cave artists were probably women. Researchers study stenciled hands and think that they're female. So Penn State archaeologist has floated an intriguing theory about ancient cave art. But he says here that it's usually been ascribed to ancient men. The new theory comes about from a relatively simple study. They just measured the fingers and the hands throughout the caves in Europe. They said people have made a lot of unwarranted assumptions about who made these things and why. If it holds up, the research could change ideas about traditional gender roles in ancient societies. Again, it's interesting stuff. But like the green agenda will most likely be used for a social type engineering agenda. Scientist solves Yeti mystery. So they solve the mystery, as of yesterday or today. The geneticist suspects it's a polar bear, brown bear hybrid. So remember this article from last year, I guess. It says a Bigfoot DNA test prove hairy creature exists. And basically what they came out to say was that it was basically what they include the creature maybe a human relative that somehow developed around 15,000 years ago as a result of hybrids between Homo sapiens with an unknown primate. And I've covered this before about it was a bear and a human. It was just basically a mixing of genetics back in the day. And this is conspiracy theory, so it's theoretical, but that's what I believe they are. As far as the scientists solving the Yeti mystery, saying that they're different, just a polar bear and brown bear, I don't think they're really telling you the truth, which is not a really big surprise. Especially when you have stuff like this coming out, saying that the science is self-correcting myth. The scientific method sounds great on paper. You mix in grant swindling, incompetence, and fraud, and the, quote, science you get on the other side can turn into a bunch of bullshit. But don't worry, science is self-correcting, says The Economist. The academic scientists readily acknowledge that they often get things wrong, but they also hold fast the idea that these errors get corrected over time as other scientists try to take the work further. So it says here that there's errors of these papers being published, and it says various factors contribute to the problem. Statistical mistakes, right? Professional pressure, competition, ambition push scientists. But they said fraud is very likely second to incompetence in generating erroneous results. So we all know about global warming and Al Gore, complete fraud. But again, that was to sell an agenda. So I think I pretty much made my point with that. Moving on here, pillars from the past. Swedish archaeologists uncover rows of pre-Viking foundations for giant wooden poles near a 1,500-year-old royal burial ground. And it says this basically found an ancient pagan religious center during work on a new railway line. They said they're unclear as to their purpose. They're running completely straight lines, and they believe that they would have been 7 meters high and needed at least a ton of rock to support them. So scientists said the pillars are believed to have been at least 23 feet high. Bones found in some of the post holes indicate animals have been sacrificed there. It's known as a center for Norse religion, where believers gather to sacrifice animals to gods such as Odin and Thor. So they say here they've been described as Sweden's largest Iron Age construction. Killer whales go through menopause early to make sure grandparents stop reproducing and can look after their children. They say they go through in their 30s and 40s menopause. As they age, they spend more time caring for children and grandchildren. And researchers suspect that this is because the species' social structure, this is basically what it's based off. Offspring that are better cared for turn out to be more successful. Well, go figure. This is probably why they stress education. Turn your kid over to the state. So it is kind of funny, because it's like the way this society is structured. You have to send your kids off to school to be brainwashed that this is all normal. Get them vaccinated to get them brainwashed, and it's all required. And if you don't do that, that's called neglect. You can be accused of or charged with child neglect. So if you try to stay more, have more time with your children or stay around them, basically, you're sending your children off to bondage. I mean, I've talked about that before, and then all of a sudden I heard this native, or this Indian, whatever, saying this. He made a quick video about that, and I was like, weird. I was just thinking of talking about that with someone about how, nowadays we basically send our children off to financial bondage. That's pretty much their future. So, it makes sense that you'd want to have a society where the parents aren't actually raising the children, the state is, which is basically run by social engineers. I mean, that's why you always hear teachers saying, we don't get to write the curriculum, and it's mostly by these professors with highly educated people that never taught a day in their life. Well, there's a reason for that, because that's part of the main engineering apparatus. Social engineering is through education. You got to leave that up to the experts. But I mean, how can you spend more time with your children? How can you raise your children and avoid having to put them into these re-education camps, basically free daycare? You can't avoid it because you have to go to work so that you can afford to be able to raise them. Because if you don't raise them a certain way, then you'll be charged with child neglect. I.e., if you wanted to not have to go to the store and buy your food, you want to grow your own food completely. You wanted to hunt for your own food completely. It's pretty hard to do. I mean, I guess you could just try to, to go hunting and stuff like that, but you have to get permission by the state. You can't, some places, a lot of places, you can't have gardens in your front lawn. So, and of course, everything is sectioned off as far as property. So everybody owns every piece of the earth. It's all owned. So you can't just really be a nomad here either. So you have a designated way to get your food, designated places to get your food, as far as shelter goes. Why do people hate homelessness so much, and stuff like that? Why is it so big? Because you have to rent. You have to rent a place. You have to pay in order to live. You have to pay in order to eat, right? So if you have a family that's living in a storage unit and they have heat and they have food, that's bad. I mean, it's not the best example, but they're not neglecting their children. They're looking, they're still trying to protect them. But then of course the state will come and they will take them away. But my point is that's the kind of double thing that goes on, to actually convince people, parents and that in society, that by looking out for your children better, by trying to do the best that you can for them and raising them, that's actually neglecting your child. But, allowing them to be brainwashed that this is all okay and that you should poison them and stuff, poison their water. And like we talked about their milk, they're trying to get fluoride in the milk, poisoning their minds, dumbing them down. If you do that, then that's not child neglect. 1 in 3 women remove wedding rings fearing they will damage employment prospects. A third of women remove the rings when it isn't necessarily normal to do so. It says of those, 35% remove them at work and 29% at job interviews. 22% do it when they're out socializing. So more than half who ditch the ring when socializing do so to appear single. Top reason for removal is fear of damaging employment or job progression prospects. They were afraid that the signal of my relationship status would harm my career or job prospects. Do men really get divorced because their friends in the pub are doing it? A quarter of men said they're influenced by friends who are divorced. Because men are so easily influenced, when one gets divorced, it creates a ripple effect that undermines the marriages of his companions. They say women are able to make up their own minds on breaking up their marriage. It says a group of moms make a pin-up calendar showing off their tattoos and piercings to fight against traditional stereotypes. So there you go. I think the traditional stereotype of mothers is already being destroyed, or is in the process of being destroyed. So, but I guess they feel like they're being oppressed still, so they should just venture on, right? March on. I'm talking about the 50s with the whole thing with all the little gadgets and home appliances. One of the reasons, of course, was to make them less useful. They had no use or purpose, right? So the other thing too is when you had all these appliances and stuff like that, it gave them excess time, right? Because all the kids went into school to be educated by the state too, so they had all this extra time. What do? Well, they tuned into the television, and that told them how to think. And why women get weepy when drunk. Booze blues hits females faster, but men just get more cheerful as the night goes on. Low to moderate alcohol consumption was associated with cheerfulness, but excessive consumption led to decrease in happiness for girls. Planned Parenthood to teens, nothing bad or unhealthy about having a big number of sex partners. So it says here the number of sexual partners you have doesn't say anything about your character, your morals, or your personality, or anything at all. There's really nothing bad or unhealthy about having big numbers of sexual partners. In parentheses, this might as well say this, as long as you're not having babies. Which is why they're self-described as the nation's leading sexual and reproductive health care provider and advocate. And Planned Parenthood is what they're basically using your parents' tax dollars to tell you about the joys of sleeping around. Because like I said in the 60s, again, women empowerment, you're being oppressed, this is part of your liberation. Victoria's Secret shoplifter, 17 years old, who was stopped by security guards with a dead baby or fetus in her bag, already has a 2-year-old son. This is from Africa. This is good old propaganda. Early marriages are responsible for 20% of maternal deaths. There's probably some truth to this, but this is about getting them to pursue a career and not focus on raising a family. Again, Africa, abortions kill 1,500 people a year. You mean babies, fetuses? No. Most of these pregnant victims are the youth because they're not supposed to have families. Planned Parenthood celebrates 97 years of eugenics and overt sexualization of children. Look at that. Planned Parenthood. Care, no matter what.